I never imagined I'd be in a situation like this. Today, I'm standing in court, accused by my own wife's sister of something I never thought could happen. She says I'm the father of her baby, and now my marriage, my family, and my reputation are all on the line. Every eye is on me, every word I say could change everything. I don't know what the DNA test will reveal, but I know one thing for sure. Nothing will ever be the same after today.
My name is David Mitchell, and 6 months ago, my life was perfect. I lived in suburban Denver with my wife Sarah, whom I'd been married to for 8 years. We had 2 beautiful children, Emma, age 6, and little Jake, who just turned 4. I worked as a mechanical engineer at a respected firm, and Sarah taught 3rd grade at the local elementary school. We had our dream house, a white picket fence, and what I thought was an unshakable bond with our extended family. Sarah's younger sister, Jessica, had always been the wild one. At 28, she was 5 years younger than Sarah and seemed to live life on the edge. While Sarah was responsible and grounded, Jessica jumped from job to job, relationship to relationship, always chasing the next thrill. Despite their differences, Sarah adored her sister and always tried to help her when she was in trouble. Last year, Jessica moved back to Denver after another failed relationship in Los Angeles. She was broke, heartbroken, and needed a place to stay while she got back on her feet. Without hesitation, Sarah invited her to stay in our guest room. I wasn't thrilled about the idea. Jessica had a way of bringing chaos wherever she went, but I loved my wife, and if helping Jessica made Sarah happy, I was willing to make it work. For 3 months, Jessica lived with us. She was actually trying to turn her life around this time. She got a job at a local restaurant and started saving money for her own apartment. The kids loved their fun aunt, and even I had to admit that she was making an effort to be responsible. There were no wild parties, no dramatic breakups, just a young woman trying to rebuild her life. But then something changed. Jessica became withdrawn, moody, and started avoiding family dinners. She would disappear for hours without explanation and seemed constantly on edge. Sarah was worried sick, thinking her sister might be falling back into old patterns. We tried talking to her, but she insisted everything was fine. Then came the morning that changed everything. I was getting ready for work when I heard Sarah scream from downstairs. I rushed down to find her holding a positive pregnancy test, tears streaming down her face. But these weren't tears of joy, they were tears of confusion and fear. The test wasn't hers. She had found it in Jessica's purse while looking for her car keys. When we confronted Jessica, she broke down completely. Yes, she was pregnant. No, she didn't know who the father was. She had been seeing someone, but it was complicated, and she was scared to tell us. Sarah immediately went into protective big sister mode, promising to support Jessica through whatever came next. For the next few months, we rallied around Jessica. Sarah went to doctor appointments with her, we helped set up a nursery in what was supposed to be Jessica's temporary room, and we prepared to welcome a new family member. Jessica seemed grateful, distant, almost as if she was carrying some terrible secret. The baby, a beautiful little girl named Lily, was born on a rainy Tuesday in September. She had Jessica's dark hair but strikingly blue eyes that looked remarkably similar to mine. I noticed it immediately, dismissed it as coincidence. Lots of people have blue eyes, right? That as the weeks passed, the resemblance became more pronounced. Lily had my jawline, my nose, even the same little dimple in her chin that both my children had inherited. Friends and family started making comments. She looks just like Uncle David, they would say, laughing. At first, we all laughed too. It was just a funny coincidence. That's when Jessica dropped the bombshell that would destroy everything I thought I knew about my life. It was a cold November morning when Jessica asked to speak with me privately. Sarah had taken the kids to school, and I was enjoying a rare quiet moment with my coffee when Jessica walked into the kitchen, holding baby Lily. She looked exhausted and desperate, her eyes red from crying. "David, we need to talk," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I gestured to the chair across from me. "Of course, Jess, what's going on? You've seemed really stressed lately." She sat down, clutching Lily tighter, and took a deep breath. What she said next felt like a physical blow to my chest. "David, I think you're Lily's father." I nearly dropped my coffee mug. "What? Jessica, what are you talking about?" Look at her, David. Really look at her. She looks exactly like you. She has your eyes, your nose, everything. People keep saying it, and I can't ignore it anymore. I stared at her in disbelief. Jessica, that's impossible. I would never. I'm married to your sister. I know what it looks like, she said, tears starting to fall. But think about it. I was living here during the time I got pregnant. We were alone together sometimes when Sarah was at work. Maybe something happened and we both blocked it out, or maybe ... double quotes maybe what? I stood up, anger rising in my voice. Jessica, nothing happened between us, ever. I love Sarah, and I would never, ever betray her like that. But Jessica wasn't backing down. The timing fits perfectly, David. Lily was conceived in February, right when I was living here. And look at her. She's the spitting image of you. I felt like I was in a nightmare. This conversation couldn't be happening. Jessica, even if the timing fits, that doesn't mean anything. I never touched you, not once. By the way, I'm curious about our viewers. When you think about small communities or everyone knows each other's business, which city comes to mind for you? Drop the name of that city in the comments below. I love hearing about different places where stories like this might unfold. Jessica continued, her voice growing more desperate. I need to know the truth, David. I deserve to know who Lily's real father is. I want a paternity test. Fine, I said, surprising myself with how quickly I agreed. Let's do the test. When the results prove I'm not the father, this crazy conversation will be over. But Jessica shook her head. It's not that simple. If you are the father, I want you to take responsibility. I want child support, and I want Lily to know her real father. And if I'm not, then I'll apologize and try to figure out who the real father is. That evening, when Sarah came home, I had to make the hardest decision of my marriage. Do I tell her about Jessica's accusation and risk destroying our family over what I knew was impossible? Or do I handle this quietly and spare her the pain? I chose honesty, and it nearly destroyed us. Sarah's reaction was immediate and volcanic. She screamed at Jessica, calling her delusional and attention-seeking. She screamed at me, demanding to know if there was any truth to the accusation. When I swore on our children's lives that nothing had ever happened between Jessica and me, Sarah broke down sobbing. How could you even think this? Sarah cried to her sister, David is my husband. He's the father of my children. How could you destroy our family like this? But Jessica stood her ground. Look at Lily. Sarah, really look at her. The resemblance is undeniable. That night, Sarah and I lay in bed, not touching, not speaking. The silence was deafening. Finally, Sarah turned to me. David, I need to ask you this once, and I need you to tell me the truth. Is there any possibility at all, that you're Lily's father? I looked into my wife's eyes, the same eyes that had looked at me with love and trust for 8 years, and I spoke from my heart. Sarah, I swear to you, on everything I hold sacred, that I have never been intimate with your sister. I have never betrayed you, not once, not ever. That baby is not mine. Sarah nodded, but I could see the doubt creeping in. Jessica's accusation had planted a seed that would grow into something that threatened to strangle our marriage. The next morning, Jessica had already made an appointment for a paternity test. The paternity testing clinic on Colfax Avenue was sterile and impersonal, exactly the kind of place you never want to find yourself. I sat in the waiting room, flanked by Sarah on one side and Jessica on the other, baby Lily sleeping peacefully in her carrier. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Mr. Mitchell? A nurse called my name, and I followed her into a small room where she swabbed the inside of my cheek with what looked like a large Q-tip. The process took less than 5 minutes, but those 5 minutes felt like an eternity. Results will be available in 5 to 7 business days, the nurse informed us as we prepared to leave. We'll call with the results first, then mail you the official documentation, 5 to 7 business days. A week of my life hanging in the balance over something I knew was impossible. The drive home was silent except for Lily's occasional gurgling sounds. Sarah stared out the window, lost in thought, while Jessica clutched the baby's carrier like a lifeline. I focused on the road, trying to process how my life had become so surreal. That afternoon, while Sarah was grading papers and Jessica was napping with the baby, I called my brother Mark in Phoenix. Mark was a family attorney, And while this wasn't exactly his area of expertise, I needed someone to talk to who understood the legal implications of what was happening. "Jesus, David," Mark said, after I explained the situation, "this is a mess. Have you considered that Jessica might be doing this intentionally?" "What do you mean?" "Think about it. She's broke, unemployed, and has a baby with no father in sight. You're a successful engineer with a stable income. Even if she doesn't believe you're actually the father, proving paternity could set her up financially for the next 18 years. I hadn't considered this angle. But Mark, she's family. She's Sarah's sister. Family dynamics can get complicated when money and desperation are involved," Mark warned. "I'm not saying that's definitely what's happening, but you need to protect yourself. If those test results come back positive, even if it's a lab error or contamination, your life could change dramatically." That evening at dinner, the atmosphere was unbearable. Emma and Jake, sensing something was wrong, ate quietly while stealing worried glances at the adults. Jessica sat at the far end of the table, barely touching her food, while Sarah mechanically cut Jake's chicken without really paying attention. "Daddy," Emma finally asked, "why is everyone so sad?" I forced a smile. "We're not sad, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups just have complicated things to figure out." "Is Aunt Jessica moving away?" Jake piped up. "She seems really sad all the time now." Jessica suddenly stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. "I need some air," she mumbled, and walked out onto the back patio with Lily. Sarah watched her sister through the sliding glass door. "The kids are picking up on all this tension," she whispered to me. "What are we going to do if ... if what? If the test comes back positive?" I reached across the table and took her hand. "It won't, Sarah, I promise you. It won't." But even as I said the words, I could see doubt creeping into my wife's eyes. How could I blame her? Her sister was absolutely convinced I was the father of her baby, and the physical resemblance was becoming harder to ignore. Over the next few days, our house felt like a powder keg waiting to explode. Jessica became increasingly agitated, constantly asking when the results would arrive. She started making comments about needing to plan for Lily's future and asking pointed questions about my income and benefits at work. Sarah threw herself into her teaching, staying late at school and bringing home extra work to avoid the tension at home. Our conversations became stilted and formal, like we were strangers sharing the same space. Meanwhile, I couldn't shake Mark's warning about Jessica's potential motives. I started paying closer attention to her behavior, and what I saw troubled me. She had been making phone calls she didn't want us to overhear, disappeared for hours at a time claiming she was running errands, and seemed to be documenting everything. Taking photos of our house, our cars, even screenshots of my LinkedIn profile. On Thursday evening, 6 days after the test, I came home from work to find Jessica in my home office, sitting at my computer. She quickly closed the browser window when she heard me coming. "Jessica, what are you doing?" She looked flustered. "Oh, I was just ... I needed to check something online. My phone died, but I had seen enough to know she had been looking at something she shouldn't have been." After she left the room, I checked my browser history. She had been researching child support laws in Colorado. My blood ran cold. Mark had been right. This wasn't just about finding out the truth. Jessica was preparing for a financial windfall. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to find out who Lily's real father was, whether Jessica wanted me to or not. Friday morning brought the call we had all been dreading and anticipating. I was at work, reviewing blueprints for a new construction project, when my phone rang. The caller ID showed the testing clinic's number. "Mr. Mitchell, this is Linda from Rocky Mountain Paternity Testing. I'm calling with your test results." My hand gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles went white. "Yes, the test results are conclusive. You are not the biological father of the child in question. The probability of paternity, 0%. I felt like I could breathe for the first time in a week. "Thank you," I managed to say. "Could you please email me the official results?" "Of course. They'll be in your inbox within the hour." I immediately called Sarah at her school. "The results are in," I said without preamble. "I'm not the father." I heard her exhale deeply. "Oh, thank God. David, I'm so sorry I ever doubted you. You don't need to apologize. This whole situation has been insane." "Have you told Jessica yet?" "No, I wanted to tell you first. I'll call her now." But when I called Jessica, she didn't answer. I tried several more times throughout the day, but her phone went straight to voicemail. When I got home that evening, her car wasn't in the driveway. Sarah met me at the door, looking worried. She's been gone all day. She left this morning right after you went to work, and she took Lily with her. I've been calling and texting, but she won't respond. We found a note on her bed. Need time to think. We'll call soon. Jay, this is ridiculous, I said, frustration boiling over. The test proves I'm not the father. What more does she need to think about? Sarah sank onto the couch. David, what if she doesn't accept the results? What if she thinks the test was wrong or contaminated? I hadn't considered this possibility, but given Jessica's recent behavior, it wasn't out of the question. Some people, when faced with evidence that contradicts their deeply held beliefs, simply refuse to accept reality. Over the weekend, we heard nothing from Jessica. Sarah was beside herself with worrying, convinced something terrible had happened to her sister and the baby. I was more concerned about what Jessica might be planning. My concerns proved justified on Monday morning when I received a registered letter at my office. It was from a law firm I had never heard of, Brennan, Walsh & Associates. The letter was brief but devastating. Dear Mr. Mitchell, we represent Ms. Jessica Chen in the matter of paternity and child support for the minor child Lily Chen, born September 15th. Despite recent test results, which our client believes may be inaccurate or compromised, Ms. Chen maintains that you are the biological father of her child. We are prepared to pursue all legal remedies available, including but not limited to court-ordered DNA testing through a neutral third party, establishment of paternity, and appropriate child support arrangements. Please contact our office within 10 business days to discuss this matter. Failure to respond will result in formal legal proceedings. Sincerely, Robert Brennan, ESQ. I stare at the letter in disbelief. Jessica was actually going to court over this, even after the test results proved her wrong. I immediately called Mark. She's hired an attorney, I told him after reading the letter aloud. Mark whistled low. This is serious, David. She's not backing down. You need legal representation immediately, but the test already proved I'm not the father. Doesn't matter. She can claim the test was faulty, contaminated, or that you somehow falsified the results. A judge might order a second test through a court-approved facility. More importantly, she's created a legal record of her claim. Even if you ultimately prove she's wrong, this could follow you for years. That evening, I had to tell Sarah about the legal threat. She was devastated. I can't believe my own sister is doing this to us, she cried. How can she put our family through this when she knows the truth? I don't think she cares about the truth anymore, I reply. I think this has become about money and desperation. The next few weeks were a blur of legal consultations and document preparation. I hired Jennifer Walsh, an attorney who specialized in paternity disputes. She was sharp, experienced, and brutally honest about what we were facing. The good news is that you have a negative paternity test, Jennifer explained during our first meeting. The bad news is that Jessica can challenge its validity. We need to be prepared for a second test, and we need to start building a case that demonstrates why her claim is baseless. What kind of case? We need to establish that you had no opportunity to father this child. We need witnesses who can testify about your character and your relationship with Jessica. We need to show that her claim is motivated by financial desperation rather than genuine belief. As word of the legal battle spread through our social circle, I began to experience something I had never encountered before: public suspicion and judgment. Friends who had known me for years started treating me differently. Some were supportive, but others seemed to believe that where there's smoke, there must be fire. The worst part was seeing how it affected my children. Emma came home from school crying one day because another child had heard their parents talking about Uncle David's baby scandal. Jake didn't understand what was happening, but he could sense the tension and started having nightmares. Sarah stood by me publicly, but I could see the strain wearing on her. She had lost weight, was constantly tired, and had started seeing a therapist to cope with the stress of her sister's betrayal. 3 weeks after receiving the lawyer's letter, Jessica finally called. David, I want to talk. Jessica, where have you been? Sarah has been worried sick. I've been staying with a friend. I needed space to figure things out. There's nothing to figure out. The test proved I'm not Lily's father. I think the test was wrong. I want a second test. Through the court system. Fine. We'll do a second test, a third test, whatever it takes. But when they all come back negative, this ends. You apologize to Sarah and me, and you find Lily's real father. There was a long pause. And if I'm right, if you are the father. I'm not, but if you are, I thought about Mark's warnings, about Jennifer's advice, about the legal papers I'd been served. If I am, which I'm not, then we'll deal with it. But Jessica, this is destroying my family. Sarah is falling apart, my kids are suffering, and you're tearing apart everything we've built. I'm sorry about that, David, I really am. But I have to do what's best for Lily. After I hung up, I realized that Jessica truly believed she was doing the right thing. In her mind, she was fighting for her daughter's future, even if it meant destroying her sister's family in the process. The second court-ordered paternity test was scheduled for the following week. Until then, all I could do was wait and pray that this nightmare would finally end. The Jefferson County Family Court building loomed before us like a concrete monument to broken relationships and shattered dreams. As Sarah and I walked up the steps on that gray December morning, I couldn't help but think about how surreal this all felt. 6 months ago, I was a happily married father of two with a stable life. Now I was being sued by my sister-in-law over paternity of a child I knew wasn't mine. Jessica was already inside with her attorney, Robert Brennan, a sharp-dressed man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair and the demeanor of someone who had seen every possible family drama. Lily sat in her car seat next to Jessica, now for months old and even more resembling me, and before. A fact that didn't go unnoticed by the handful of people in the courtroom gallery. My attorney, Jennifer Walsh, had prepared me for this moment, but nothing could really prepare you for the surreal experience of sitting in a courtroom while someone accuses you of fathering their child. All rise for the Honorable Judge Patricia Martinez, the bailiff announced. Judge Martinez was a stern-looking woman in her 60s with graying hair pulled back in a tight bun. She had a reputation for running an efficient courtroom and having little patience for frivolous cases. I hope this would work in our favor. We are here today for the matter of Chen v. Mitchell, regarding establishment of paternity and child support. Judge Martinez began. Mr. Brennan, you may present your opening argument. Brennan stood and approached the bench with confidence. Your Honor, this is a straightforward case of paternity establishment. My client, Jessica Chen, maintains that the defendant, David Mitchell, is the biological father of her 4-month-old daughter, Lily. Despite a privately conducted paternity test that came back negative, Ms. Chen has reason to believe those results may be inaccurate or compromised. He gestured toward baby Lily. As the court can see, there is a striking physical resemblance between the child and Mr. Mitchell. The timing of conception coincides exactly with the period when Ms. Chen was living in the Mitchell household. We are requesting a court-supervised paternity test and, pending positive results, appropriate child support arrangements. Jennifer stood to respond. Your Honor, this case represents a troubling attempt to weaponize the family court system for financial gain. My client, David Mitchell, has already submitted to one paternity test which conclusively proved he is not the father of Ms. Chen's child. He is willing to undergo a second test to put this matter to rest once and for all. She paused for effect. However, we believe the evidence will show that Ms. Chen's claim is not made in good faith, but rather stems from financial desperation and an unfortunate resemblance that has led to misguided assumptions. Judge Martinez looked between both attorneys. Very well, we'll proceed with a court-ordered paternity test first. Depending on those results, we may need to explore the circumstances surrounding the alleged conception. Mr. Mitchell, are you willing to submit to DNA testing? Yes, Your Honor, I reply, standing briefly. Ms. Chen, you understand that if this test also comes back negative, this case will be dismissed. Jessica looked uncertain for a moment before her attorney whispered something in her ear. Yes, Your Honor, go. We'll recess for the testing to be conducted. Results should be available within 72 hours. We'll reconvene Friday, 2 p.m. for the results. As we filed out of the courtroom, I noticed several people in the gallery whispering and pointing. Word had gotten out about the case, and I could feel the weight of public scrutiny. In a city like Denver, news travels fast, especially news this salacious. Outside the courthouse, Jennifer pulled Sarah and me aside. That went about as well as we could hope for the opening round, she said. The judge seems no nonsense, which is good for us. But David, I need to warn you about something. What? Even after this test comes back negative, which we all know it will, Brennan might try to argue that you somehow contaminated or falsified both tests. It's a long shot, But desperate attorneys sometimes take desperate measures. Sarah grabbed my arm. They can't do that, can they? I mean, that would be fraud. Technically, yes. That they could argue that David had motive to falsify the results to avoid child support. It would be very difficult to prove, but it could muddy the waters enough to create reasonable doubt. I felt my stomach sink. So even when this test proves I'm not the father, this might not be over. Let's take it one step at a time. The test results will either vindicate you completely or give Brennan ammunition to continue fighting. We'll know more on Friday. The next 3 days were torture. Sarah had taken a leave of absence from school, unable to concentrate on teaching while our lives hung in the balance. The kids stayed with Sarah's parents, shielded from the circus that had become our daily existence. I tried to continue working, but concentration was nearly impossible. My boss, understanding but concerned about the negative publicity, suggested I work from home until the case was resolved. It's not about what I believe, David, he explained. It's about what's best for the company while this plays out in public. Wednesday evening, I received an unexpected phone call. It was Tom Bradley, Jessica's ex-boyfriend from Los Angeles, the relationship she had fled from when she moved in with us. David, this is Tom Bradley. I heard about what's happening with Jessica and the baby. Tom, how did you get my number? I got it from a mutual friend. Look, I need to tell you something. I think that baby might be mine. My heart stopped. What? Jessica and we were together in February, right before she moved to Denver. She didn't tell me she was pregnant until last week when someone told her about the court case. David, the timing fits, and honestly, that baby looks nothing like you. She looks like my sister did as a baby. Tom, are you willing to testify to this? Are you willing to take a paternity test? Yeah, man. I should have spoken up earlier, but Jessica told me she was sure the father was someone else. She never even told me she was pregnant, but when I saw the news coverage, I realized I might be the father. I immediately called Jennifer, who arranged for Tom to fly out to Denver. If Tom was indeed the father, it would not only clear my name but expose Jessica's claim as either a genuine mistake or deliberate fraud. Friday morning arrived with the kind of crisp winter air that makes Denver beautiful and inhospitable at the same time. Sarah and I sat in the courtroom, holding hands for the first time since this ordeal began, waiting for Judge Martinez to read the results that would determine our future. The court has received the results of the paternity test, Judge Martinez announced. Mr. Mitchell, you are not the biological father of Lily Chen. The probability of paternity, 0%. I felt Sarah's hand squeeze mine as relief washed over us both, but our celebration was premature. Your Honor, Brennan immediately interjected, my client requests that we explore the possibility that these results, like the previous test, may be unreliable. Jennifer stood quickly. Your Honor, we have new evidence that may resolve this matter entirely. We have identified a potential biological father who is prepared to undergo testing. Judge Martinez raised an eyebrow. Explain. Tom Bradley, Ms. Chen's former boyfriend from Los Angeles, has come forward. He was in a relationship with Ms. Chen during the time of conception and is prepared to take a paternity test. I watched Jessica's face drain of color as Tom was called into the courtroom. This was the moment of truth. Tom Bradley looked nervous as he walked into the courtroom, but determined. He was about Jessica's age, with dark hair and, surprisingly, blue eyes, though a different shade than mine. As he approached the witness stand, Jessica's attorney whispered frantically in her ear, but she just stared at Tom with what looked like a mixture of shock and panic. State your name for the record, Judge Martinez instructed. Thomas Allen Bradley. Mr. Bradley, what is your relationship to Ms. Chen? Tom glanced at Jessica before answering. We dated for about 2 years in Los Angeles. We broke up in March of last year, right before she moved to Denver. Jennifer stood to question him. Mr. Bradley, were you and Ms. Chen intimate during the month of February, when this child would have been conceived? Yes, we were. We were trying to work things out actually. We spent Valentine's Day weekend together, and we were intimate. Several times during February. Did Ms. Chen inform you that she was pregnant? No, she didn't. I only found out about the baby when a mutual friend saw news coverage of this court case online. When I saw the photos of the baby, I realized she looked a lot like my younger sister when she was born. Judge Martinez leaned forward. Mr. Bradley, are you willing to submit to a paternity test? Yes, Your Honor, absolutely. I watched as Robert Brennan tried to object, but Judge Martinez cut him off. This is relevant to the case, Mr. Brennan. If Mr. Bradley is the biological father, it conclusively disproves your client's claim against Mr. Mitchell. Your Honor, Brennan protested, this is highly irregular. My client has never claimed that Mr. Bradley is the father, but she also never mentioned that she had been intimate with Mr. Bradley during the conception period. Did she? Judge Martinez replied sharply. Ms. Chen, did you have sexual relations with Mr. Bradley in February of last year? Jessica looked trapped. Her attorney whispered something to her, but she nodded reluctantly. Yes, Your Honor. And why didn't you consider him as a potential father? Jessica's voice was barely audible. Because David looks so much like the baby. And because Tom and I had broken up, but you were intimate during the conception period. Yes. Judge Martinez ordered an immediate paternity test for Tom, which was conducted right there in the courthouse. The waiting period for results would normally be 72 hours, but Jennifer had arranged for expedited processing. We would have results by Monday morning. As we left the courthouse that Friday, I noticed that the small crowd of observers had grown. Someone had clearly tipped off local media, because there were 2 news vans parked outside, and reporters trying to get statements from everyone involved. Mr. Mitchell, how do you feel about this new development? A reporter shouted. Jennifer quickly stepped in. My client will not be making any statements until this matter is fully resolved, but I could see the shift in public opinion already happening. The story was no longer local man accused of fathering sister-in-law's baby. Now it was becoming sister-in-law's paternity claim falls apart as real father emerges. That weekend was the first time Sarah and I had felt hopeful in months. We brought Emma and Jake home from their grandparents and tried to have a normal family weekend, complete with pancakes on Saturday morning and a trip to the Denver Museum of Nature and Science. Daddy, is the scary stuff over now? Emma asked as we looked at dinosaur fossils. I knelt down to her level. I think so, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes or get confused about important things. But we're working to fix it. Is Aunt Jessica going to say sorry? That was the question I couldn't answer. Would Jessica apologize once the truth came out? Or would she double down on her claims, refusing to admit she had been wrong? Sunday evening, Tom called me from his hotel. David, I need you to know something. I don't think Jessica was lying intentionally when we broke up. It was really messy. She was hurt and angry, and I think she genuinely convinced herself that she couldn't have been pregnant by me because she didn't want it to be true. What do you mean? We broke up because I told her I wasn't ready for marriage or kids. She wanted to settle down, and I wanted to keep playing the field. She probably blocked out the possibility that I was the father because it would mean facing the fact that she was going to be a single mom with a guy who had already told her he didn't want children. This perspective hadn't occurred to me. Maybe Jessica wasn't deliberately trying to frame me for financial gain. Maybe she had genuinely convinced herself that I was the father because the alternative was too painful to accept. Tom, if you are the father, what are your intentions? I'm going to step up, he said without hesitation. I've been doing a lot of thinking this weekend. I'm 30 years old. I have a good job. And if Lily is my daughter, she deserves to have her father in her life. Jessica and I may not work as a couple, but we can figure out how to co-parent. Monday morning came with unseasonably warm weather for December. Sarah and I sat in the courthouse for what we hoped would be the final time, waiting for Judge Martinez to read the results that would end this nightmare once and for all. The court has received the results of Mr. Bradley's paternity test, Judge Martinez announced. Mr. Bradley, you are the biological father of Lily Chen. The probability of paternity is 99.97%. The courtroom erupted in murmurs and whispers. I felt Sarah's hand squeeze mine, as years of tension and suspicion finally lifted from our shoulders. We were free, but as I looked at Jessica, I didn't feel triumph or vindication. I felt sorry for her. She was crying quietly, holding Lily, probably realizing for the first time that her accusations had nearly destroyed her sister's family over what was ultimately a case of wishful thinking and denial. Judge Martinez continued, Ms. Chen, your case against Mr. Mitchell is dismissed with prejudice, Mr. Bradley. Given that you are the biological father, you have parental rights and responsibilities. I suggest you work with Ms. Chen to establish custody and support arrangements. As we prepared to leave the courtroom for the final time, Jessica approached me with tears in her eyes. still holding baby Lily. David, I don't know what to say. I was so sure. I looked at this young woman who had nearly destroyed my family, and instead of anger, I felt compassion. Jessica, you were scared and alone. You convinced yourself of something that wasn't true because the truth was too painful to face. I've ruined everything with Sarah, haven't I? I glanced at my wife, who was watching this exchange with a mixture of hurt and sympathy. That's between you and her. But Jessica, you need to get help. You need to understand why you were willing to believe something so damaging without any real evidence. Tom approached us, looking nervous, but determined. Jessica, we need to talk. About Lily, about the future, about how we're going to make this work. As they walked away together, I realized that this ordeal had taught me something valuable about the power of assumption and the danger of letting fear drive our decisions. The legal victory felt hollow at first. Yes, I was vindicated, but our family was still broken. Sarah and I went to counseling. We had to. The doubt Jessica planted had taken root, and we needed help removing it completely. Even believing David, there was still this voice asking what if. Sarah admitted to our therapist. The resemblance between Lily and me had been purely coincidental, common features that meant nothing, but fear doesn't always listen to logic. Jessica started therapy too, finally confronting why she'd been so willing to pursue such a devastating claim. You represented everything I wished Lily's father could be, she told me during one painful conversation. Stable, committed, present. I think I wanted it to be true. Tom stepped up immediately once paternity was confirmed. He moved to Denver, found work, and started building a relationship with Lily. The three of them began navigating co-parenting with the help of a mediator. But the social damage lingered. Some friends remained supportive, others kept their distance. I had awkward encounters at work, at the store, everywhere. People love a scandal, but they're slower to embrace vindication. Emma and Jake bounced back fastest. Children are remarkably resilient once the adults in their lives stop acting crazy. Is baby Lily our cousin now? Jake asked one day, and I realized that despite everything, family bonds could survive even this. Sarah was slowly rebuilding her relationship with Jessica, but trust, once shattered, takes time to repair. 3 months later, Tom called me. His voice was shaking. David, Jessica just told me the truth. The real truth. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? She knew I was the father all along. She knew from the beginning. The words hit me like a physical blow. Everything I thought I understood about Jessica's motivations crumbled in an instant. She couldn't face telling me about the pregnancy, Tom continued. She knew I had said I wasn't ready for kids, so instead of dealing with that reality, she convinced herself you were the father because you represented everything she wished I could be. That evening, Jessica came over. She looked like she had aged years. I need to tell you both the complete truth, she said, her voice trembling. I knew Tom could be the father. Deep down, I always knew. But I was so afraid of being rejected by him that I made myself believe it was David instead. Sarah's face went white. You knowingly put us through hell. I didn't think of it that way then. I genuinely convinced myself David was the father. I focused on the resemblance, pushed away any thoughts about Tom because that reality was too scary to face. Jessica explained what her therapist had taught her. Motivated reasoning. The psychological process of convincing yourself of something you want to believe while ignoring contradictory evidence. When I accused you, David, I genuinely believed it was true. I had deceived myself so completely that I even passed a polygraph test my attorney suggested. The revelation was devastating and somehow liberating at the same time. Jessica wasn't a malicious person trying to destroy our family. She was someone who had used psychological defense mechanisms to avoid facing an uncomfortable truth. But knowing this didn't erase the months of hell we'd endured because she was too afraid to face reality. Jessica's confession about motivated reasoning became the key that unlocked everything I needed to understand about this nightmare. She hadn't woken up one day and decided to destroy our family. Instead, she had engaged in something far more insidious. She had systematically convinced herself of a lie because the truth was too painful to bear. The therapist explained it to me, Jessica said through tears. When I saw how much Lily looked like you, David, it wasn't just a coincidence to me. It felt like salvation. Here was proof that my baby's father was someone stable, committed, present, everything Tom had told me he couldn't be. The psychological process was chilling in its simplicity. Every time evidence pointed toward Tom, the timing, their relationship status, even Lily's features that actually resembled him. Jessica's mind would redirect that information away, focusing instead on any detail that supported her preferred reality. I started avoiding Tom's calls, deleting his texts, even throwing away photos of us together. I was literally erasing evidence that contradicted what I wanted to believe, she admitted. Sarah and I sat in stunned silence as Jessica revealed the extent of her self-deception. She had convinced herself so thoroughly that she genuinely believed her own story. When she took the polygraph test, she passed because in her mind, she was telling the truth. The scariest part, Jessica continued, is that I was so invested in this version of reality that when Tom showed up in court, my first instinct wasn't relief, it was panic. I was terrified that my carefully constructed belief system was about to collapse. This revelation transformed my understanding of what we had been through. This wasn't a story about a malicious person making false accusations for money. This was a story about how fear and desperation can literally reshape someone's perception of reality. But understanding Jessica's psychological state didn't erase the damage. Sarah and I had spent months questioning our marriage, our trust, our fundamental understanding of truth itself. Our children had been traumatized, my reputation had been damaged. All because Jessica couldn't face the reality of her situation. I know this doesn't fix anything, Jessica said, looking directly at me. But I needed you to understand that when I accused you, I wasn't lying. I was living in a reality had created because the real one was too scary to face. The concept of motivated reasoning would haunt me for months afterward. How many times do we all engage in smaller versions of this psychological trick? How often do we see what we want to see, believe what we need to believe, and ignore evidence that challenges our preferred version of events? Jessica's story was extreme, but the underlying mechanism, our ability to deceive ourselves, is something we all possess. The terrifying realization was that if Jessica could fool herself so completely, what other self-deceptions might be shaping all of our lives without us even realizing it? 2 years later, I'm a different man. Not because of what Jessica did to me, but because of what I learned about human nature, truth, and the power of self-deception. Jessica and Tom are successfully co-parenting Lily, who's now a bright 3-year-old with Tom's smile and Jessica's determination. Sarah and I are stronger than ever, our marriage tested by fire and proven unbreakable. Emma and Jake barely remember the chaos. Children move forward with remarkable grace. That the real transformation came from understanding motivated reasoning, that terrifying human ability to convince ourselves of whatever reality we need to believe. Jessica's case was extreme, but we all do this in smaller ways every day. I learned 4 crucial lessons that I share with everyone facing similar crises. First, truth emerges, but it takes time. Document everything. Trust the process, but don't let the battle consume your life. We kept detailed records while maintaining our daily routines and relationships. Second, reputation is fragile, but character witnesses are invaluable. The friends who stood by us during our darkest hours reminded me why building authentic relationships matters more than social status. Third, face problems immediately, no matter how painful. Jessica's nightmare began because she couldn't have a difficult conversation with Tom. Avoidance always makes things worse. Fourth, forgiveness isn't about forgetting, it's about understanding. Jessica made terrible choices, but she was acting from fear and desperation, not malice. Understanding her psychology helped us all heal. The most chilling realization, if Jessica could deceive herself so completely about something this serious, what smaller self-deceptions might we all be carrying? Do we see our marriages clearly, or only what we want to see? Are we honest about our parenting, our finances, our friendships? Now when I meet people facing false accusations or family betrayals, I tell them this: the storm that threatens to destroy you might be the very one that teaches you how strong you really are. Sarah and I discovered our marriage could survive anything. Our children learned resilience. Even Jessica learned to face uncomfortable truths. The sounds of normal life surround me now. Sarah helping with homework, Jake practicing piano, Emma laughing at something on her phone. These are sounds I never take for granted anymore. Speaking of communities where stories like ours unfold, I'm curious. When you think about places where everyone knows everyone's business, which town comes to mind? Drop that name in the comments below. Sometimes the biggest lessons come from the smallest, most unexpected places. If you're facing something similar, remember, truth has a way of surfacing, justice usually prevails, and families that choose love over fear can overcome even the most devastating challenges. It won't be easy, it won't be quick, but it will be worth it. Sometimes the accusations that threaten to destroy us become the very experiences that teach us who we really are, and show us just how strong we can be when everything is on the line.